They step into the biggest shows with the biggest names. And sometimes they get written on or off in a moment's notice. It's time to find out all the dramatic details of what it's like to be a guest star. With your host, Pete Ferrero.
Let's go.
It's good to see you again.
Good to see you. How are you?
I'm good. The holidays are in full effect here, right?
They are. I got my fire. I got my Jewish poinsettia.
I love it. Yeah, I immediately recognized the poinsettia. Yeah. I was like, that is some
I
classic.
always say, I love poinsettia. I love Christmas music. And people go, but you're Jewish. I go, yeah, but did you ever hear Hanukkah songs? There's two.
Right.
Cradle, Cradle, and Hanukkah, oh, Hanukkah. And
Right.
then we're done.
And then there's the Adam Sandler one that he did.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's
That's
all.
goofy kind of a thing that he did.
I
Yeah.
didn't grow up with that one.
So that's like my era of. I'm always fascinated by SNL because like there are people that grew up with different SNLs, right?
Yeah.
So like for me, I'm definitely the Chris Farley, Adam Sandler. Of course, I know all the iconic ones, but so you're probably before, right? Yeah, that
I was
era.
the original.
Yeah, which is the coolest one, I would imagine.
And oh my God, so
Yeah.
good. And it was hard after that. Like I was never the biggest SNL after that, even though
I
I do
understand.
some of them.
But then there's some times when you see a sketch or something, you're just like, oh my God, that is so funny. Those guys are so funny, or those girls are so funny.
Yeah, and it's just a really well-written sketch. I mean, you can't really deny that, right?
Exactly. You've done a lot of this incredible guest starring work. I just was watching some of it. I guess let me ask you first, where did the acting bug, I ask everybody that, where did it sort of start with you?
I never wanted to be an actress.
Never. Wow.
Never. I never crossed my mind. And then
in school you weren't in the plays and all this stuff that everybody else has been saying that they've been doing?
No.
Not one play, not one.
No, I was a dancer.
Okay.
I was a really good dancer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I did one play. I did one play at the JCC. I fell on stage, but I made it really funny when I got up and everybody laughed and I was like, oh, that's cool. But that was really it. I performed as a dancer. I was always the star of my dance recitals. But how it really happened was my best childhood girlfriend. I mean, we were like born together. Her mother and my mother were best friends. Her father and my father were best friends. Our grandparents were the best of friends. It was like a lineage. Anyway, she was working for a now defunct agency called Triad.
Okay, I've heard of that. Yeah.
Which was a big deal back then.
Yeah.
And she had a boss whose name I will not say that was very tough. And she was supposed to send 3 girls on a talent search and she forgot.
I love how this.
She called me frantically.
An actress by accident. Yeah.
Totally by accident. Seriously. Literally, I'm going to get fired. Oh my God. You have to go. It's for Dick Clark. There's this like prize was, I think, like $500,000 or something in a studio contract. And I was like, I'm not dancing right now. And I wasn't dancing because I had bursitis in my left hip. And I'm like, she's like, I don't care. Read from a book. There's going to be 7,000 girls there. Nobody's going to even notice you.
Right.
That's it. I just don't want to get fired. So I went.
Fair
signed
enough.
in.
Helping a friend out.
Friend out. It was Texas Trilogy. I opened this book I had. I don't even know where I got the book from. And I just read it from this book, like read from a book. And I was like, okay, thank you. And I hopped off the stool and I went to walk out and it was Mary Jo Slater,
Okay.
his mom,
Mm-hmm.
and Mary Lynn Henry, who was head of casting for the network at the time. And I go to leave and they go, stop. And I'm like, what'd I do wrong? Like, why? This is the person we want you to have your headshots done. This is Alice Spivak was her name. This is the acting coach. We'd like you to go see her before you come back. And I was like, come back? And they're like,
I'm only doing a favor here.
I'm like, I have no idea what y'all are talking about.
Right.
So I laughed. I called my girlfriend. I'm like, what the?
Mm-hmm.
What is this? I don't want to. She's like, what? And I go, and like, they were paying for it.
Right. Right. So this is not like one of those things where you got to sign up. This is them giving you the royal treatment of being this. Yeah.
So I call, I don't know, the photographer, I call Alice Spivak and I'm like, what is this thing? And she's like, Alice Spivak, she's got the New York accent. Don't worry. Read something for me. And like the perfect,
Right.
we see in all the like movies,
Came right out of central casting.
Right out of Central Casting. She's still working, Alice. She was a
Amazing. Mm-hmm.
And so I read something she put in front of me. She handed me something and I read it. She's like, you're very good. And I'm like, I'm very good at what? Very good at what? Like, I can read,
Exactly.
I'm not an idiot.
Right.
So anyway, I had to get a monologue. I called Lisa. I was like, I'm not going.
Right.
Like,
That's it. I'm
don't
out.
go. I'm going to get fired for sure.
Because now you've gone down the rabbit hole, right? You've gone.
Oh, I'm down a rabbit hole. I had no
Yeah.
idea there was a rabbit hole.
Right.
And then, so I go back for another meeting, and then I get called to the big meeting, and it was like the casting directors. Dick Clark was there, and then I remember De Niro was there, and the guy who played Paulie in Rocky was there, and they were like in adjoining rehearsal halls or something for something, and they sat in at one point, and I'm standing there. We had to do like a bathing suit thing, and I still have it. I'm standing in my bathing suit with my arms crossed, just like looking at everybody, and what I'm thinking to myself is, how do I get out of here? Like, what is my exit strategy here? And the photographer snaps that picture, and the next day it's like on the cover of the New York Post, Melanie Smith, she's got the right stuff.
This is incredible.
And I make it to the top, I don't know, 25.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm yelling at my friend. I'm not like, this is amazing. I'm like, what have you done? and then the next thing I know, I get a call from this big casting director, Joan C.
Okay.
And she has me come in to meet her, and she puts me on camera, and she calls Alice, and she's like, the camera loves this girl. And then the next thing I know, Alice is like, you have to send out your headshots. And I'm like, your headshots. So she said, this is how much it didn't mean anything. So 2 monologues. One was from Mademoiselle Colombe. And at the end of the monologue, Colombe says to her husband, you have no idea how uncomplicated life is without you in it. And I'm really sorry this is turning into a long story, but it's
I don't
funny.
mind. I love it. No, this is what I love. Yeah.
And so anyway, Alice has me get my headshots. She's like, just send it out to 25 agents. You won't hear from any of them.
And that's by the way, that's a step back then. That's a mail. That's, you know what I mean? It's not like you just fire off an email to 25 people.
No, you have to
go do a thing.
Dictionary.
Yeah, you're doing a thing. Yeah.
The back, my resume said Melanie Smith, 5'5", hazel eyes, dancer. That was all that was on the page.
Right. No website, no Facebook, none of that.
Not given any experience. Okay.
No resume.
Not
Right.
any of the website. There wasn't even a job, right?
Right.
Oh. So I send it out to 25 agencies.
Mm-hmm.
25 agencies call me in.
Wow.
And I do the 2 monologues, and this is so at the end, I'm in a conference room with the agents and whoever, right? And at the end of the monologues, when Colombe says, you have no idea how uncomplicated life is without you in it, I walk out of the room. And I get in a cab and go home.
You were like, nothing's coming from this. I'm out of here.
I'm like, if they don't like me, what do I want to hear about it? And if they do like me, my number's on my resume. That's all.
They know how to get a hold. They know how to get a hold of me. Right. Yeah.
So they all want to sign me. And
this is incredible.
I pick a really small agency. Michael Baird, he was with Zoli. They had a talent division at that time. They had gone from modeling to talent as well. And I liked them, and I felt safe with them. And they sat me down for the big talk. And they said, look, it takes years. You're going to have to work at everything you can get. You work for free. I go, look, I'm Jewish. I don't work for free. 3 months you got. You got 3 months.
They have 3 months, not you, right?
And you got 3 months, and if I don't have a job, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
In 3 months, I had 2 feature films and As the World Turns.
That's incredible.
That is literally how my career started.
And you walk into As the World Turns as Emily Stewart, right? Or Stewart Snyder, right? Yep. And that was played by other people. That's it. The fun thing about soaps is they can just
totally... not really. So my character was played by Jenny, Marie Masters' actual daughter, when she was a baby.
In the 70s, right? Yeah.
Yeah, or really early. So she was just a baby.
I see. Okay.
When she was a young girl, she was cast for like 6 weeks or something, like a really short time. And then as a adult, it was me.
You're the adult version of the young girl. Got it. Yeah.
And so, but then when I was on the show, I watched my first episode and I was like, oh my God, I don't know how to act. Hello. Neighborhood Playhouse. Can we work something out? And I got into Neighborhood Playhouse and then I got training. I took it very, very seriously. And
at some point, whenever I think about soaps in the 80s, I always think of that movie, Tootsie. You know what I mean? Because I mean, that's like one of my favorite movies of all time. And I don't know, kind of like, you kind of like feel that era of like 80s and soap opera. Is that accurate? Do you feel like that's what your world was?
The thing that's different is they were live.
Sure. So you were not live.
We were not live anymore. It was originally live. You know, World Turns was originally live. At one point, World Turns was the longest running show in history. But
that's right. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so they were live at one point. We weren't. No, we never used teleprompters.
I was going to ask that because that's in Tootsie as well, right there. The older actors.
We were not allowed to use teleprompters. They're horrible teleprompters.
Right.
You know, you're acting and then you're like.
Well, even on SNL, we were talking about before. Sure. Sometimes people use the teleprompter on SNL, and you're like, "What?" It's like Robert De Niro, and you're like, "Come on, man."
Like, yeah, you know, you kind of get it a little bit more with an SNL because those skits are so rapid fire, and we were rapid fire. We did an episode a day, so I was on almost every day, and so I would have 40 pages of dialogue every night, and you know, monologues that they would come in and change. You know, so you really did. I loved the 3-camera work. It was my favorite work. Mm-hmm. I never loved 1-camera work.
Right. Because it's a lot more, it's a much longer of a day, right? You just got to do.
It also abbreviates the acting process because, you know, when I did finally get trained, I was really trained for theater. I was trained at Neighborhood Playhouse and at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. And so you're really trained for stage. And so the flow of the scene and the honesty of the interaction between characters is a beautiful thing, and stuff evolves out of it. When you're doing 1-camera work, you know, you do a half a page and then they change the angle and then it's just abbreviated and then the editor pieces it together.
Sure.
So when you look at theater and when you look at daytime and when you look at sitcoms, they're really an actor's and editor's medium. When you look at film and primetime, hour-longs, it's really a director and editor's medium.
That's very true. That's a very, very valid point.
Yeah.
So you did the soap for a while. I mean, was that a fun experience for you? I mean, you did that for 5 years, I think, right?
Yeah, about 4.5 years, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I left and then I came back, and then they wanted me to stay, and I had gotten a film. I left really because my mother was dying; she had cancer, and then I ended up in LA doing primetime and film, and it took me a while to go like, I don't really like 1-camera work as much, but you know, that's what I really ended up doing out there. And then I did, you know, obviously I did like lots, you know, some comedies, and those were
well, you did 90210, which we talked about once before on something else. Yeah. But is 90210 the one of the prime times that sort of like where you start doing the guest star stuff and start doing prime? Is that the first one, or are there?
No. I think my first one might have been Evening Shade.
Okay. Yeah.
Reynolds.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, I worked all the time. It was funny. And then I think I did Blossom.
You did. Right. So let's go to 90210. You come on set of that show, and look, you're doing soaps, so I'm sure there's a lot of drama happening on the scenes of soaps. You come into 90210. That is a dramatic set teen actors that have got everything that they can imagine. They're superstars. What was that experience like for you walking into to 90210?
I got to be honest with you. I have archetypally zero fan in me. I'm so
I love this about you. Yeah.
I just like I have been around everybody, and
Right.
it's how you doing? I really we're just people walking each other home, man. Like that's what we're here doing. That's it.
Right.
And so I was sitting in the makeup chair, and it was the cutest thing that Jenny and Tori were kind of hiding outside the trailer, asking the makeup people if they could come in and meet me because they were fans of World Turns.
Amazing. Right.
So was Ian. So was Ian.
Yeah.
And I was like, they came in. I'm like, you guys are like superstars. What are you asking if you can like meet me for? I should be like asking you if I can meet you. But even my first directorial note on World Turns was, could you be a little nervous? Right. Like I grew up watching the show and I was just like, oh, all right. Now I live in Oakdale. No big deal. Like it just nothing. I've worked with really megastars and never starstruck. I've never been starstruck.
But when
I've had
you do,
a lot of respect for them, but
of course, when you do 90210, you just made the point that it's probably a one cam, I would imagine.
that's a one cam, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, was that something that like, were you like, okay, now I'm changing. We're doing this a lot more because we're not doing a 3 cam, which you were used to. Was that a adjustment?
Well, it really was an adjustment. And like I said, I went from daytime 3 cam to primetime 3 cam because of the sitcoms.
Right.
But then when I got to the 1 cam, I really did have to learn some stuff. Like there was a learning curve to it for sure. And it was really nice to get my feet wet guest starring because really it's on the job training. So I loved Aaron. Aaron and I had a very good relationship, and I did 4 series for him. But it was also funny because I learned through being in contract on World Turns that I didn't necessarily love contract work either. So I was a very weird client for Gersh and Innovative to have because I would get these offers for contract roles. And I'd be like, I don't want a contract role, which is unheard of. Like every actor wants a contract role.
Right. Yeah.
Right? That's like what they do. But I want to just keep creating different characters.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
Right? So it's like a 7-year contract would come my way and I'd be like, can't we split this up into like a long running arc or like a guest star thing? You know, like, does it have to be a contract? And they're like, what are you talking about? Like, this is what everybody fights for, you know?
Right, exactly. You want the opposite. Yeah, that's amazing.
I want to continue to be like an artist and just go, you know, okay, I played this character like on Deep Space Nine, you know, for 2 seasons. And then they're like, we need to kill somebody. And I was like, kill me.
Because I want to go do something else.
I want to do something else, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was, you know, I personally loved long running guest stars. That was my favorite work if I was going to do primetime.
Is it a challenge going when you have to, when like a 90210, you come in for 1, right? So you're like, I'm just going to be.
Melrose, I did I was
going to ask you about Melrose. Yeah. You did 90210 and then you also did Melrose. How were the sets different, or were they?
They were very different. And it's very different, you know. I'm not going to say it's a different demographic because it's really not. Everybody who watched 90210 also watched Melrose Place.
Sure.
But it was such a different character. I mean, Elisa Gardner was just sweet and, you know, wanted to do her job well and, you know, was sort of growing and learning a new kind of business. Whereas Celia Morales on Melrose was very sassy and cigarette smoking and, you know, ballsier. You know, she was a whole different edgy kind of character. And that would have run longer, but I had gotten another, you know, that was the other thing is like when you didn't have a contract and they just kept writing for you, then you could be like, all right, well, we've got this many weeks until my other job starts if you want to go do something else.
So what was the other job that you did was it Seinfeld or no, not yet?
I think it might've been Seinfeld.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about that. I just watched all three of your Seinfelds. They're so good and they're so funny. I mean, you go from like iconic show to like super iconic show, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're in three of the biggest episodes of Seinfeld, I think, anyway, you know?
And my shrinkage episode was named like the funniest moment in television history.
It's insanity. It's so good. It's so funny.
And Barbara Walters and
the first thing that you come in for, I think, is the Schindler's List. Right.
It was
Yeah.
special.
So how did you get into the world of Seinfeld?
Okay, this is another funny story. I was leaving Paramount. I had a meeting at Paramount for a series I was going to potentially do. And my agents call and they go, oh my God. You know, because it wasn't that easy to get me in for comedy. Everybody really saw me as a dramatic actress.
Sure. Of course, when you're doing As the World Turns, you did 90210, you did a Melrose Place. There's a lot of drama
and
happening.
I did a number of films. You know,
sure,
it was
exactly.
Really, that was really. So they called me and they said they want to see you at Seinfeld. And I think they called me like maybe 4:30 in the afternoon. And I go, they want to see me on the other side of the hill? Not happening. And they go, what?
This isn't a huge opportunity. What do you mean it's not happening? Right?
They go, Melanie, it's Seinfeld. We've been trying to get you in for Seinfeld for months. Like, you got to go. I go, I'm not going. I am not going to be stuck in traffic for the next, I don't know how long, and then not even make it because I'm not getting there in time. You know, I'm happy.
That aggravation would have been too much anxiety and aggravation on that trip.
And I'm not doing it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm not doing it. And I said, I go, you know, we can set it for another day.
Tomorrow. Right. And
like we can tell them another day, right? And so they were mad. They were not.
Seinfeld was mad.
I would do stuff like my agents would get mad because I would.
The agents were mad, right? I got it. Yeah. Yeah.
So they're like, oh, fine. They hang up the phone. Maybe 15 minutes pass. They'll wait.
Amazing.
They'll wait. Why don't they just reschedule it? Because it's a special. They need to cast it. So I said, all right. So I stopped. I got something to eat. I went over the
love that you stopped and got something to eat.
I got it nauseous. I was a little nauseous.
Right.
So
yeah.
I go over the canyon. It's at MTM. I remember pulling up and there was like not one other car anywhere except for right in front of the offices, right? And I go in and everybody's sitting there, Larry and Jerry, and I mean, it was a full room. And I'm like, hey, how you guys doing? I walk in, I'm like, so what's up? And we read whatever. I go, we good? And they're like, okay. And I go, okay, nice to meet you. And I get up to leave. And Jerry's like, I got to ask you a question. What does the name of your corporation mean? And the name of my corporation is all about grapefruits. And I said, well, Oscar Wilde once said a lemon was nothing but a grapefruit that had a chance and took it. I'm sorry, a grapefruit was nothing but a lemon that had a chance and took it. And I said, story of my life. And I go, nice meeting you. And I leave. And he's like, he comes out into the hallway laughing hysterically. He's like, that is the best name of any corporation I've ever seen. I was like, okay, cool. Got to get over the canyon.
You're done here.
It's all about traffic in my life. I like study traffic patterns so I don't have to be stuck in traffic.
Amazing.
And so I get the job. And I'm like, okay, they had to do a quick wardrobe on me. You know, it was a special. It was 2-part special.
It's I think it's the Raincoats. I think it's if anyone's looking to watch it.
And so typically, when you're on a soundstage for sitcoms, you have the sets and you move from set to set to set. The audience can see all the sets.
Mm-hmm.
For the hour special, which was 2 parts, you couldn't. There were sets behind sets. So
Got it.
We pre-filmed something. I'm rushed in that for my first day. They had already filmed some things. So I go in, they wardrobe me really quickly, do my hair and makeup really quickly. I get put out into set and everybody starts coming at me with this, do this, do this. And I go, all right, everybody's got to stop. And everybody stops and just looks at me and I go, nobody's introduced themselves to me. Nobody told me who does what job. Nobody told me who I have to listen to. Like, you got to give me that. And so they all like lined up, and it's like, "Hi, I'm Larry Charles. Hi, I'm Larry David.
That's amazing.
Hi, I do this, I do this, I do this." So I'm like, "Thank you so much. Who am I listening?" Whatever. So we get done with the scene. I go into makeup to get touch up, and Jerry walks in. He goes, "Who are you?"
That is so incredible.
And from that point on, Jerry and I just like hung out together, you
Yeah.
know, and we'd have lunch in his car and we'd just like chit chat and, all that kind of stuff. And I got on with the cast very well, which I was felt really grateful for because I had heard, it's such a sacred inner sanctum kind of thing that guest stars really don't really even make a ding. Like they just come and go pretty quickly. And I felt very embraced by them. They really, Jerry spent a lot of time with me. Michael spent a lot of time with me. Jason spent a lot of time with me. Julia was just lovely. And so I finished that. And then Jerry called me and he said, "If we write for you, will you stay?" And I said, "Yeah."
I mean, this is Seinfeld. This isn't, this is a different situation. Yeah.
Yeah. And so
you basically were there just for the raincoats, and then they said, "We're going to write for you."
And Jerry called and asked if I would stay if they wrote for me. And I said, "Yeah, until my next job." And then I think right after that, I got Deep Space.
Right.
And so, that's, and then
Well, about Seinfeld though, after that airs, the raincoats, it's huge. How does that change? Does that change anything in your world or not really? Are you just like, because I mean, it's like, I always talk about with people on the podcast. It's like television then was so different. If you were watched on a Seinfeld, the amount of people that saw that show is huge, right? Yeah, nowadays, it's not like that. They're happy with a couple million people that watch a show.
But especially because of the streaming now.
This is the #1 show, and you are on, in a huge part. With the Schindler's List thing becomes iconic. We use that word, but right. Seinfeld has a lot of those moments, but that's one of them where Newman catches you guys at the
Oh my God, yeah. Which like I can't go anywhere. It was so funny. I went to see one of my friends in I can't remember if it was Vegas or Atlantic City, one of those places. And he's with Hall & Oates. He's he's the percussionist. And everybody after the show came like rushing up to all of them, like, oh my God, you're Hall & Oates, you're this, da, da, da. And then somebody goes, "But that's Rachel." And they all turn away and they go, "Oh, you're Rachel." And I'm like, wait, no, that's John and Daryl. Like, you don't want to talk to me.
Yeah, what are you talking to me for?
That's John and Daryl. Like,
right. They're performing. Yeah.
They're the greatest,
I love them. Yeah.
There was like there's a funny thing about, about all Seinfelds, but there was something about even just like that moment with shrinkage.
Somebody told me that they did a Seinfeld and Michael Richards said this is going to be one of those like they were starting to become aware of what was going to be huge. When you did Shrinkage, did you walk in knowing like this is a big Seinfeld moment, or were you just no, right?
And it was probably not good thing. I was never oblivious. I was aware of the character I was playing. I was aware of telling an honest story. I was never aware of anybody's importance. Like, I never played any of the political games. I never, ever, ever, ever schmoozed. My agents got so upset with me about that stuff. I would be invited to award shows. I would never go. If I didn't, I always say I turned down more than I took. If something bothered me morally, like they were interested in me for Samantha on Sex and the City, Darren talked to me about that role seriously. And I said, I can't do it. Like morally, I don't judge the character, but I don't want to represent that promiscuity for young girls. Like I just don't want that in my arsenal. It's not, and people go, "Did you regret that?" I'm like, no, because it did what I thought it was going to do.
Right.
And I really didn't want to be a part of that message. That was really, I meant it. And that would happen a lot. Like I would read something and then I would have meetings and they would say like, well, we could change it. We could write it more towards you, for you. And if it wasn't something I was super excited about, I just wouldn't do it, you know? So, you had asked the question, which I sort of jumped
Okay.
But you had asked the question about like, did appearing on Seinfeld change things? And it's sort of, it's sort of like it's cumulative in the business. People like you, you work a lot, you're a real pro, which I pride myself on being.
Hmm.
And they go, get me Melanie Smith, right?
Yeah.
And if it's either for the job, I had a lot of offer only, right?
Hmm.
Larry offered me Curb Your Enthusiasm. Angela Lansbury offered me her shows. So I had a lot of stuff where I did not audition. I was just offered. And by the end, it was pretty much offer only when it came. I mean, obviously, like if it was a feature film, it wasn't offer only.
Right.
So, there starts to be this accumulation of work and awareness, and people start to look for you.
Yeah, it's cool.
And then so I did It's Like Do you remember the Peter Melman series?
Yeah. Hmm.
And I was pregnant at that point. And to be honest with you, after I had my son, everything changed for me. I felt like I wasn't 100% on the set. I was always thinking about my son.
Mm.
And then when I was with my son, I was like nervous about getting my work done. And I felt so fragmented that I finally, it was so crazy because at that point I was pretty much offer only. I would have like 5 screen tests. It was constant. I didn't have that worry of, oh my God, am I ever going to audition or am I ever going to, it was which one am I going to take kind of
Right.
thing.
Mm.
And then when I had my son and that realization came, I was doing a series called The Division on Lifetime with my best girlfriend, Nancy McKeon. And I was like, I can't do this. I got to be home with my son. And then everybody came out of the woodwork at that time when they heard I was in the business, and everybody kind of had an offer for me. And there was no decision to be made. I knew that deeply that I had to be with my child. But it was like, really?
It must have been a crazy time, though. I mean, I'm curious. Everybody's talking about the '90s now, right? That's the thing, and a lot of this stuff that you were doing was in the '90s. What was that world like? The Hollywood, New York TV in the '90s. How different was it then?
Different than the 80s or different than the 2000s?
'80s and also today.
Well, my experience of television in the 80s was all daytime.
Mm-hmm.
And what I will tell you about that is when I was on daytime, As the World Turns was the #1 show in the world, even above Baywatch, which was huge.
Mm-hmm.
And the time I was on World Turns, Meg Ryan just left, but it was Julianne Moore, Marissa Tomei just left, it was Parker Posey, it was Ming-Na Wen, myself, Billy Fichtner. We had such a strong cast of thespians. And I would have to say, and I'm starting to see a resurgence of this, I would have to say back then, in New York anyway, actors had to be actors.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't about just being good looking. You had to be able to do the work. You had to be a pro.
Sure.
You could not be on As the World Turns and miss a line, miss a mark, nothing. Like you were with true veterans. Most of those people won Tonys.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so when I got to LA, that was very different. I found, okay, well, it's different here. The acting matters for certain shows. The look matters for other shows.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think progressively, like now with shows like Succession,
Sure.
we're going back to where are the real thespians. Let's get the real.
No doubt.
Right.
Have you seen that, the Succession? I thought it was great.
I love that show.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love that show. Like that's a show, for example, I wouldn't have gotten, but I would have wanted, and I probably would have gotten at least, I probably might have gone to network on, but I wouldn't have gotten it. Like those were the shows I was coming really close to.
Yeah.
was
Well,
me
I
and
mean, even Sex in the City, it does become a huge thing. So that would have been, that would have been something totally different. You would have been a part of the reunion, that
right, right,
they
right.
couldn't, yeah.
So that's like, I think it's changed now because I can look at a tabloid in the grocery store and not know one person.
Hmm.
That's how much programming there is.
Totally.
Remember, like in the 80s, in the 90s, it was like the WB,
Sure.
Paramount were the branch off,
They
right?
were just starting to
They
come
were
around.
just
Yeah.
starting, and it was like, I'm not sure if this is better for the actor or not
Hmm.
because it's there's so many limited series now and jobs are so transient and the unions have changed and the money has changed drastically.
Yeah.
Like you made a lot of money in the business, even when you were an up and comer.
Sure.
Now you don't.
I doubt it's like that now. I think now it's you did a streamer show, who knows what it is.
You don't make what, and it's all the residuals are rolled in. I still get residuals for world turns. They don't get like residuals are almost a thing of the past now.
Yeah.
It's changed dramatically. And even the support for the actors changed dramatically. It was the other thing that changed is back in my day, when you came out of daytime, you were going to have a battle getting into prime time
That's true.
and a battle getting into film from prime time even, right?
Yeah.
Now you can be like a singer and you get a movie and you do a movie and you get a record deal and then you write a book and then you have a
You could
hairline.
be it's almost better if you have a huge YouTube following.
It's the strangest thing. It's just like
It's
I
a bizarre
hear
place. Yeah.
people say things that are, they're reps, they're not talent. They'll say, oh, so and so is up, but I think so and so is going to get it because she's got a million more followers. And I'm like,
Who cares? Yeah. The talent should matter, right?
of course. And then again, bringing up Succession, you look at Succession and they don't even have a presence on social media, really.
No,
Yeah.
exactly. You have to go look for them. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's, I think, how it's changed is the number of opportunities because of the streaming services. The money has definitely changed unless you're a megastar. Yeah.
And there's a certain hustle, I guess, back then too, right? I mean, I know you eventually were getting a lot of things offered to you, but there's a certain pacing that you have to have, I guess, to go for the other part, keep working, right?
Yeah. I mean, you drive a lot in LA,
Hmm.
and you have all these meetings, whatever, and it gets complicated because remember, everything in life, everything in becoming professionally successful, it's relationships, right?
Sure.
So you develop very strong relationships with casting directors, producers, directors, agents, whatever. So if you're up for something with like the casting director that you're one of their favorites and you're against that a show you want to do and it's not really that relationship, you get emotional about it because you're like, I don't want to upset them. I don't want to upset them. You have to be very mindful. So it's like actors have to be smarter than most people understand. People think, oh, it's easy to act. First of all, it's not easy to act. Acting is a skill, and you better learn how to do it if you want to be good at it. But also,
And I think that you really can speak to that because you're someone who came in not with
skill.
no skill, didn't even realize it, but then you had to develop.
And
Yeah.
I worked really hard at it. Really hard. It was 24/7 kind of thing until I really understood what I was doing. And then I always had the best acting coaches. Even after I went through Neighborhood Playhouse and worked at whatever theatrical schools and studied with, Stella Adler, and I always had the best acting coaches that I worked with. And, you also, though, have to be smart about what kind of work do I want to do,
Right.
right? I coach people in businesses now, CEOs, startup founders, people that are changing their lives, people that are building new, fresh businesses coming out of, a profession for years. And, when you're building any kind of business, you have to understand what business you're trying to build.
Sure.
The problem with actors in their careers, and one of the reasons I think that they don't have the careers that they long for, is because it's this kind of throw enough shit against the wall, see what sticks.
Mm.
And then, they're just so grateful to make a buck or to have a job, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's the smartest approach. I think you should know, like Julianne, I have to say, Julianne knew exactly the career she wanted to have, and she manifested it.
Right.
And
Totally.
really, so did Meg.
Yeah, of course. Right.
And coming off those shows, there was a really interesting piece they wrote, and they said, Meg was going to be the next Goldie Hawn, and Julianne was going to be the next Meryl Streep, and they had said I was going to be the next Jane Fonda. And which was fun, and when I got to LA, they were trying to produce a show for me called Barbarella, right? And then it didn't get the green light ultimately, but there was a ton of meetings, and we were in progress, and they were writing it around me, and you just like anything, you have to do it by design, but I feel like actors just go, I'll take anything.
Sure.
Because of their perspective. I'm just lucky to work.
And I wonder if that's in today's time, are they just lucky to work? You know what I mean? With there being so many shows, I don't know.
I don't either. I'm not, I feel very bad for the kids coming out of the top schools in New York, who I know many of them. And I actually work with some of them to help polish them for auditions and things like that. But they come out of these schools, and now with COVID and so many things shut down, and when I was in the business, the biggest saying I could remember was, show them nothing before you show them bad, right? Never give them a bad headshot, never give them a bad audition if you can help it, and never tell them to come see you in a bad show, never do a lousy reel, have no reel, right?
Right.
And I think these kids now are just taking anything that they can get. The other thing that's very different is, in my day and age, parents talked this industry down.
Sure.
Don't be in the arts. Don't be an actor. Don't be a singer. Don't be a dancer. Now parents are doing anything to get their kids to be trained to go into it.
Sure. More creative spaces. They're allowing people to be in more creative spaces where that was sort of like that's not a real job, right?
Not really. You better have a backup plan, honey.
Right. Exactly. What do you really want to do? No, that's what I want to do. Yeah. Yeah. Tell me about working on the Murder, She Wrote and the Angela Lansbury world. What is that like?
She is the most elegant, warm-hearted, authentic, generous human being. You don't audition for that show. Angela becomes aware of your work, and then she invites you. They handle it more like a company. And I had such a great experience working with Angela. It was my first day on the job. I don't know why I did this. I don't know. It was so much fun, though. I saw her trailer, and it was like this enormous, like,
of course,
it was like the Uber Star Wagon. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like a family of 23. And I was going to my small Star Wagon, and I looked over and I was like, this would be really funny. So they handed me my wardrobe, and I see Angela coming, and I take my wardrobe, I fling it over my shoulder, and I walk, and I get there faster, and I start to walk up the steps, and she says, excuse me. And I said, yes. And she said, that's my dressing room. I said, no, that's my dressing room. And she goes, no, that's my dressing room. And she's looking totally confused. And I go, oh yeah, they're supposed to take that off there. Right? And she goes, what? I go, I'm kidding, Angela. I'm Melanie Smith. I'm playing blah, blah, blah. She goes, oh my God. And she starts laughing, and everybody's laughing. I said, it's so nice to meet you. And I went back to my trailer, and then we were on set, and she just sort of like sat next to me, and we just talked and talked. And she's like, you remind me of me when I was younger. And so a matter of less than a year after that, my sister was killed in a car.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Very, very tragic and very heartbreaking for me, because we were very
so sorry. Yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah.
That was many years ago. And Angela called me, and she said, I don't want you with nothing to do. I want you to get busy. Come. I want you to do another
You did another one. Yeah.
Yeah. So I went back and I did another character on the show. So I played two separate characters. And then I got offered another couple, but I was working. I was on shows at the time. But that was the kind of human being. And
That's amazing.
something I will never forget how raw I was.
Mm.
It was very, very soon after my sister was killed that I did this job. And they had fitted this dress, this blue velvet dress. It's so funny. Somebody just posted a picture of that somewhere out on social media, and I can't remember. There's a navy blue velvet dress, and it was quite pretty, but they had sewn the armpits wrong, and they were just cutting into me. And I was sitting in my chair like this, like holding my arms open, and I was just talking, like letting it be. And Angela said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, they sewed the armpits too tight when they tailored this for me. And it's hard for me to put my arms down, but I'm okay. You know, this is just one scene. We'll get through it." And she said, "No, I won't hear of it. We're going to take a break."
Wow.
And she was like, "You've had a hard enough time. I don't want you uncomfortable." So wardrobe came in, they took the dress, we had like an hour break, they redid the whole thing, and then we came back. And that's the kind of human being she was.
That's really incredible.
Yeah, she's such a special woman. I learned just by being in her presence so many things.
For sure. Yeah. And that's a level of kindness that you don't really hear about in that world, right?
Yeah, and she's a grande dame. You know, I mean, she's the real deal.
Sure.
And she's done it all.
Yeah, for sure.
She's a legend. And I always say there are top spiritual lessons I learned from very specific people in that business.
Yeah.
And, you know, with her, I would say I learned the light of grace in being who you are and staying authentically true to kindness and love and unity. And she ran that company like a family, you know, and it was all her family. They were all fit and they were all in the company, you know, and you felt it. You felt her soul that way. Yeah.
That's very cool.
Something else. She really is.
You do a Matlock, right? Yeah. What's that like?
Well,
Matlock, some of these old shows they're so great to hear about because we don't talk about them enough anymore. There's so many shows. It's like, so I don't know if anybody, sometimes I'm like, does everyone know what Matlock was so great? Do people know that? You know what I mean? But you do a Matlock. Yeah.
So I was on hold to play the new character on Matlock.
Mm-hmm.
And finally I got flown to the Carolinas to meet with Andy, and he was like, "She's too sexy. I know the network wants her. I know the network wants her. I know she's our number one person, but I just think she's too sexy. I think she'll be a distraction on the show, whatever." Now, what was so hard about that period of time was I had 4 offers, all pending. And I was not released from the Matlock offer. So the other 3 offers pulled. One was from Aaron.
Oh, great. Yeah.
And which I hated doing because Aaron and I were very close and I really loved Aaron. And I really would have loved to have done another show with Aaron. And I think it was a legal drama, but I can't remember. And I will never forget, I was at the Wadsworth Theater seeing a show. I look at my cell phone, there's all these missed messages. I go outside, and it was like a flippy thing, you know.
Right, yeah.
A little flip phone. And my agent, I can tell they sound terrible, and they said, "Here's the news. They wouldn't let you out of the contract for Matlock. Everybody else hit their time, and they had to cast. Andy just made the decision. You're too sexy." So
it's
I went
a really nice compliment. Thank you very much.
Offers to having none.
Incredible, right?
I was laying in the grass at the Wadsworth Theater, laughing my ass off, going, "Only me," right? So then I get a call, and they tell me, "We want you to be the lead of this pilot that's called I, Pat Paletti, and it's a spinoff from Matlock. If the pilot gets picked up, we want you to do a character arc. If it doesn't, it's just going to be a Matlock." And that was the pilot episode with Leah Delaria.
Yeah.
Who, it was probably one of the funnest jobs I ever had because Leah made an agreement with me. She's like, "I will go to a straight club with you." If you go to a gay club with Yeah,
Did you go? Did you go? Yeah.
She used the night out at the Straight Club for some material she did on Carson.
Oh, amazing.
Because everybody kept leaning over her going, "Hi, Tim talking to me." She was so funny. So finally we go to the lesbian bar and we have a great time. And she's just over the moon that, she's got Rachel with her, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so the next day we get up and it's in the paper that Leah, Delaria, and Rachel, Emily are dating, right? So I'm like, oh my God, whatever. Andy comes in, we're doing a scene in the courtroom. Andy comes in and he's like, so you were in the paper and, whatever. And Andy forgot his lines so many times. And he was it was so classic. And so I said, does anybody know when Andy Griffith died? And he almost falls on the floor laughing, right? We all burst out in hysterics. I'm like, Andy, wake up, man. We got to get this thing done. Let's get it in the can. So finally we finished that one. The next day is the scene in the bathing suit.
Yeah.
So every time he had to put lotion on my back, he would forget his line. So it was one of those days, right?
Yeah.
Yes, the nicest guy though. And Leah was a blast to work with. She is a wild woman.
Oh, it sounds like it.
Yeah. And you all watch her on, Orange is the New Black or whatever.
Of course. And then you do come back for Curbed. You do. Larry brings you to do this, and you got offered Curbed. Did you stay friendly with those guys?
Oh yeah. And Bob Whitey, who was one of the co-creators and the director of it, is still a very dear friend. And they called me. This is like the story of my life. They called me. They go, "We have this episode. We really wrote it with you in mind, so on and so forth." And I go, "I can't. It's my son's birthday party, and my sister rented a tent." Like,
okay, yeah.
Tell her to just re-rent the tent. And I'm like, "You guys, I really can't. She's gonna get so upset at me." And it was like, Melanie, give me a break. So anyway, we did it. It was a blast.
It's really funny. It's such a good episode too. Yeah.
Blast.
And I love the interplay with you and Cheryl.
And it's all
I was going to ask you about that. That's improv, right?
Oh.
So what's that experience like? Is that the first time that you did that, or
it's the first time I had done improv professionally? I had taken classes.
Sure.
But when you're on the fly like that, especially with a mind like Larry,
right?
I don't say that lightly. Larry's fast, like lightning fast. And he thinks of the weirdest things. So, the worst thing you can do on a show like that with that kind of improv is to fall flat. So you got to keep your mind bright and really open to the fact that you can go anywhere. You don't have to stay nice. You'd have to and when you look at the show, I don't watch a lot of my stuff. I'm not somebody who watched myself, but I did watch Curb a couple of times with friends. And one of the things that I noticed was it really makes the work better when you are not afraid of your instincts. So, like the scene, do you remember the scene where we're all in the bar and I invite Cheryl and her friend to sit with us?
Yes.
Right. Nobody expected me to go in that direction. So you can see the look on their face, and you can even see like Larry's face, like, oh, wow, we didn't even think, and the cameramen were getting ready to we gotta. So there's a lot more action because if somebody says something, everybody's got to be on their toes.
Yeah, to move into the next setup. If we're gonna do a new setup, right?
That's exactly right. If they said, oh yeah, sure, we'll sit down. Now we've got to get 4 people at a table.
Right. Yeah.
Right? And everything changes.
It's great. I love that you say that though. I love that spot where it's and she's like, no, whatever.
No, not really. Thanks. Yeah. Or when we did the circle, right? When we did, right. And Lorraine Newman, oh my God, Lorraine Newman had us on the floor. And then we had to try to think of his fictitious name, and I threw in Todd, and everybody just lost it. They were like, "Oh my God, that is like the worst name, and it's perfect." But they cut out so much of Lorraine's stuff because it was really like on the line.
Yeah.
Some of it was way over the line, but it was really on the line, and it was truly funny. She's a
It must have been like such a great experience to be able to just be so free in that world at that time in terms of comedy. I don't know if I mean, he still does Curbed, obviously, but like I don't know, like, because we're such a generation of like what's acceptable and what humor is acceptable and all that stuff.
Cancel culture.
Cancel culture, yeah.
It's murder to be funny now.
It's really tough, and I think it's sad what's happening with comedy. I mean, I understand the severity of certain people's, feeling certain ways and whatnot, and there's definitely understand lines, but I don't know, just let people just be funny. What's wrong with just being funny?
Now it's like, you know what it used to be. So and so and so and so and so and so walked into a bar. You can't do that anymore.
No, you can't make that joke.
Now it's like, someone who's not terribly tall and someone who has, lighter skin and somebody who has a big nose. Like
all of it.
You can't. Colin Quinn talks about that in one of his. I'm like a comedy hoe. I love comedy. Like I love comedians. They're my favorite animal. And he was talking about how they're like, you're not allowed to be truly funny anymore. And I have this conversation with the youths in my life.
Sure.
My son or his friends or Nancy's kids, or, that things that are created in the context of art, it is the primary arena where there needs to be freedom, because that's where the magic happens. That's where we grow perspective, right? And okay, listen, Rodney Dangerfield was about as rude as they came, but he was funny, right?
Hilarious. Yeah.
George Carlin, Richard Pryor. I mean, they said horrible things about human beings, but they were really funny. And if my whole philosophy is, then don't go see them.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's almost like a society that's, can't laugh at themselves. And that's the thing, a part of the problem. They've never been taught to like be able to laugh at themselves,
Yeah, and
self-deprecating.
All of the nuanced humor and not so nuanced humor against every ethnic group and every religious group and all of that kind of stuff, there is a seed of truth.
Sure. Exactly.
It, right?
Yeah, of course.
I don't know if you've ever seen Colin Quinn's piece that Jerry directed.
I have not seen that. No.
Story of New York, or New York Story. I can't remember which one it's called, but it's brilliant. He goes through historical accuracy, how we all came through New York.
I got to take a look at that.
Yeah, you'll love it. And so I agree. I think that one of the things I love about some of the shows on the air right now is when they aren't afraid of being
exactly
horrific human beings, or judgmental, or verbally specific about how awful they are.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. Or how often their character is. Right. For sure.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's a necessary, Shakespeare was not politically correct.
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
Williams was not politically correct. And so I don't know. I think it's a disservice. I also think sometimes when I go and I see stage pieces, it's a bit of a challenge to watch certain roles being cast that just aren't really the story or the real story that the playwright wanted to tell. But let's see what comes out of it, right? Let's see what comes out of this amalgam of new way of thinking and everybody trying something that's never been done before. But I do agree. I think there should be more freedom in not such a cancel culture,
last thing I want to ask you about is the Star Trek. It's a huge universe, I mean, it's a different universe than some of the stuff that you had done. You know what I mean? It's sci-fi, it's Comic-Con, it's all of that stuff. What was that space like to work in?
It was a very magical space to work in. And the reason why is, imagine every time you take a role as an actor, you're discovering who you are as that human being, right?
Mm-hmm.
On Deep Space Nine, you're discovering who you are as a non-human being.
It's
You are
fascinating.
an
Yeah.
alien. And remember, not only do you have to think about it in another worldly sense, right? You don't want to use your touchstones as being earthly things, right? They should be different. But also, like, you say words that don't even exist. Like,
Right.
I'm going to make ramufta. Right? Like, do you know how hard that is to get that to stick in your brain?
Because it's not a thing.
Stuck, obviously stuck because it's still there, right? You know, if you say casserole, you know what one looks like.
Right, exactly. But you don't know what that
around it, but you don't know what ramufta is, right? You've got to make that up. And you know, so there's Vedic name. What is that? You know, like you say things that you're not speaking another language, you're not speaking any language. It's a fictitious language.
Right.
Right.
It's a whole other thing. It's not even But and the fans of the super fans of that genre know the language. They understand the language, right? They understand what this means, what being like to a level that's unknown. The Star Trek universe fans are just
You have no idea. You have no idea. When I did the 50th reunion, you know, my son's in the kitchen right now. When you do when I did the 50th reunion, the night before the actual or celebration, not reunion, you know, celebration, whatever.
Sure, yeah.
The night before I went around to the restaurants and, you know, I had dinner at 1 and then I, you know, walked around the casino for a bit. It was in Vegas. And then I kind of sat down. Hold on one sec. Are you done? You got it? Okay. So, my sweetheart's home.
Nice.
So I that's okay, honey. So I sat, and I just kind of listened. Now, first of all, it's crazy what they know. Like they could link up what was in the original Star Trek. What was that in the 60s or the late 50s?
Yeah, I think the 60s. Yeah.
To the episode that was on yesterday, right? Like
insanity. Right? There's so much of this.
Writers made a mistake because that's not the day they were born, and and I'm thinking to myself, like, I don't even know where I was.
What you're talking about?
Like, what do you like? How do you know all that? Like, well, I don't even know what I ordered last night on the menu. So when I went to speak the following day, and there's a lot of people there. Like you're speaking to 6,000 people.
It's
right?
insane. Yeah, I mean, and it's wonderful if you're a fan of it. It's like everybody's a fan of different things, so I'm not mocking it by any means. You know what I mean? But it is.
What I loved was, honestly, if everybody in the world was that committed to something, we'd have a better world.
Totally.
Like, these are a group of people that love something passionately, that use their creativity around it, that have the gentlest instincts. They're such a nice, warm, intelligent group of people that are just so
intelligent beyond intelligence.
Like geeked out, totally geeked out, which we all geek out on something.
Something, right? Sure.
And yet, like, I mean, these costumes, when they go to these things, they spend some coin on those.
Oh, seriously.
Those are gorgeous costumes. And they're just exhilarated. They're, you know, and I made mention of that when I spoke to them. I said I was so impressed and so moved because one of the things that doesn't get talked about a lot is not only how much as talent, whether you're someone with my career or someone who has a much bigger career. You know, people say, you know, really grateful for my fans or whatever, but we're really grateful for our fans for a number of reasons. One is we wouldn't have a job if there weren't fans, right?
Sure.
But the fans are actually what help the characters evolve.
Totally. Mm-hmm.
Right?
I get that. Yeah.
Not in a vacuum. And so when you look at the way the fans love Torizial, it's really beautiful because she really was like an ambassador of peace.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So when she died, which I was so excited that I had,
you suggested, right?
I don't guess, but who gets to do a death scene?
Exactly.
Very few actors do death scenes, right?
Right.
So it's like when she died, hope died.
Sure. Hmm.
And there was something so beautiful and powerful about that. So it was so great to be a part of that. And it made it far more, memorable. But that whole community loves these characters, knows everything about them. They're so devoted to these shows. It's really cool. It's a really cool bunch of people.
I'm curious where you get recognized the most from. Is it the Seinfeld, or is it that? Because I feel like there is a huge audience of the Star Trek fans as well. Like, do you know what's coming when someone walks up to you? Like, I know you from, you're already like waiting in anticipation, like to see what it's going to be.
Well, one of the funniest things that ever happened to me was when I was checking out at a grocery store, and the checkout gentleman said to me, "Oh my God, you're Torres-Yal." And I was like, "How did you know that?" And he goes, "Your teeth." I was like, "Oh yeah, that's right. I didn't have anything on my teeth. The rest of me was covered."
Yeah.
Well, there is a particular energy to soap opera fans.
Sure.
And then the Seinfeld. I get more male fans.
Well, you were a thing. I get it. I guess. With love and respect, I get where that's going.
Yeah. So I get a lot of mail. It was funny. I was in the Lego store with my son the day before yesterday, and they had a Seinfeld Lego set.
It's amazing, right? Did you get it? Did you get the...
I didn't, but I'm thinking I should. Like, I need to
You
go
should
back.
have that. Yeah.
But so Seinfeld is mostly guys that
Yes.
it's like they're like over the moon about that. Daytime, mostly women, and they're like oh my God, you're on my story. It's like that kind of a thing. And then my Trekkie fans, they are both. They're all different. Like they're probably
right. It doesn't. You don't even know, right? Yeah,
eclectic for sure.
For sure. Well, this has been great chatting with you and talking about all these fun parts. I mean, I love all of it. I loved rewatching some of that. Your Seinfelds are so funny. Eating the lobster with Michael Richards, and then Michael Richards sees the baby and he does it. Well, Michael Richards freaks out when he sees the baby. If you when you're a part of that and you see Michael Richards do that, that's got to everybody probably wants to laugh hysterically. Is it free?
Of course, he's so great at physical comedy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, Michael's really serious. He's not a jokester when when he's not on set. He's not a jokester. And he's always like getting his entrances ready. He's highly focused. And they all had a very different way. They all had a very different way about them. And Jason, always checked in with his wife to make sure like that scene was what he wanted it to be. And, it was very, every job I ever had.
That's fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah. Every job I ever had was entirely different. It was a different alchemy. And, I always make a joke. I probably always mention this on anywhere I speak, is the best craft service was Seinfeld.
Nice. Yeah.
You could go back and get anything from sushi to a bagel with cream cheese and lox. I mean, you just wanted to sit there and peanut M&M. You just wanted to eat all day. But, they all have their own personalities. It's a totally different experience. Every show is different.
It's fascinating, but it's interesting to learn that world, because as a guest star, right, you have to fit in and figure it out very quickly.
Yeah, you definitely have to be malleable. You got to be able to go in. You have to know how they function. Are people fun and funny, or is it a very serious set? Do they like to even things like, some actors don't like to run lines. Some actors, just want to wing it. And, so you really do. You've got to feel. And because most of my guest stars were arcs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether I was hired as an arc or when I got there, they wrote an arc.
It became an arc. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Which happened a lot. That was helpful because you got to really know the world.
Sure.
I even actually, and I will not say what show it was, I have had experiences where people came and said, can you do us a favor and not do such good acting because you're making them look bad.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Like there are interesting things and balances, you know, when you work sometimes with less experienced, you know, people that don't make bold choices. If you make bold choices, you can sort of tumble right over them, right?
And you have to tone yourself down as an
Yeah,
actor.
yeah. And you're like, oh, I wasn't really aware of that because I'm so used to working with, like I
People
said,
that work. Yeah.
and even as I was trained, my first, you know, rodeo, I was with Tony Award winners,
I
right?
know.
I was with Tony Award winners. That's who I was bouncing off of. And that's a different animal. That's somebody
Totally.
who knows how to take command of a story.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was you do have to understand each world you're in. You do have to honor it. Um I loved being a guest star. I loved my arcs. I loved those things. And like I said, I loved them more than contract roles. Which is why I pushed for them.
Amazing. Well, this has been great chatting with you. I hope you have a great holiday season, or if I know it's past already, but you know, enjoy your Christmas music that you like listening to in the fire.
And New Year's is
and
coming.
New
This
Year's is coming, and all that
my
great stuff.
favorite time of year. And thank you for having me. And we'll keep in touch. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Good seeing you again. Thank you so much for this. Okay, this has been guest star. That was Melanie Smith. How great was that? She's just such an interesting person. She's had so many great roles, and absolutely love her stuff on Seinfeld and Curb. Make sure you guys check all that cool stuff out. I am going to be taking next week off from the podcast world of guest star, but I will be back in the second week of January with way more guests, way more action, way more fun stuff happening. So until then, this has been guest star. I will see you next time.